Hi, this is Frank Strocio with Stories Best Told in the Dark. My story tonight is especially meaningful to me since two of my best friends died within weeks after this happened. I'll always remember my friends Danny and his son Adam, and all I can say is may they rest in peace. Adam was only 19 at the time. And, by the way, this is also on a Podbean as a podcast. So there's an app called Podbean you can put on your cell phones and that. And just wanted to mention that if you have that app and you listen to podcasts on that app, just connect with Shadow Man and you'll get me. And you can listen to it there too. You won't have the video, but you'll have the audio. So the story I wanted to talk about tonight has to do with a Hampton Inn that I used to stay at all the time and what I experienced there. So I had a corporate level director position at this company, and the headquarters for the company were in Ohio. So I would stay at a Hampton Inn, which was almost across the street, not too far from the corporate headquarters. And I worked at this company for a little over 10 years. And that entire time I spent, every month I was there for some period of time at this hotel. The first couple of years, were just like staying at any hotel. But eventually I got very friendly with the owners. And I got very friendly eventually with the hotel manager. So one day I'm having breakfast there with some of the folks that worked for me. And I was talking about a haunting that I experienced in New York. And one of my previous episodes, I go into great detail about that. But the hotel manager overheard our conversation and he came to me and he said, Frank, or Mr. Frank is what he called me. He said, Mr. Frank, I heard what you were talking about, and I've got a very interesting story for you if you're interested. Now, for the first couple years staying at this hotel, the hotel manager, Danny, and I, it was all business. I would check in, he'd say hi, I'd say hi, and that would be it. But now we seem to have had something in common, and he was somewhat of an introvert anyway. But once he found out the things that I had been involved in, it turns out that he was a sensitive, and so was his son Adam, who also worked at the hotel. And they had experienced many things, and so I was looking forward to talk to this guy. So that evening, rather than go up to my room, I hung around and I talked to Danny for a while, but it's pretty busy in a hotel lobby. And but what he was telling me was that in this hotel, he said every night, sometime after 9 o'clock, sometimes it would be 12 o'clock, sometimes it would be 3 o'clock in the morning, but every night he would see this shadow kind of figure come through the kitchen, through the area where the tables were, where people would have breakfast, down the hallway, down the other hallway, through the elevator doors, and come out on the third floor. Now, he knew that for a couple of reasons. One is, on the camera, he could see what looked like a fog or a haze that he assumed was this figure, and it was always on the third floor. And it always went into one particular room on the third floor. So he's telling me this story. And I says, well, I got to see this. I said, I'd really be interested in seeing this. So I came back down to the lobby around 10:30 that evening. And of course, by 10:30, the traffic had really calmed down. Not a whole lot of people are checking in at that time. There are, but not many. So Danny and I got to talk quite a bit. about some of his experiences, and he went into a bunch of different things him and his son Danny had experienced. And as we're talking, out of the corner of my left eye, I catch movement off inside the area where they put out the food for breakfast. I call it the kitchen area. And I look back at Danny, and Danny says, "You see it too, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "It's always here." He said, "But most people can't see it. I'm surprised you can." I said, "Well, I've got a long history of paranormal experiences ever since I was 2.5 years old in my crib, which is another story for another time." I said, "So I've lived in haunted houses. I've had all kinds of issues." So I watched this thing. It kind of drifts along, and it was gone. And I said, "Where is it now?" He said, it'll come through. He says it typically doesn't use doorways like we do. It just goes right through the wall. And lo and behold, out near the hotel manager, out near the desk where they check in, and there's a little pantry where you can buy candy bars and stuff in a hallway, it comes out. So I says, "Whoa." I says, "I got to go follow this thing." He said, "I wouldn't do that if I was you." I said, "No, I got to. It's going to bother me if I don't." So I go over into the hallway, and I see it just as it's taken a left turn towards the elevators. So I go around the corner real quick. The elevator doors, for some reason, are open. I jump in the elevator, and the doors close. And instead of pushing a button, I just stand there. And all of a sudden, up go the hair on my arms, and I get this creepy feeling. And the button for floor number 3 lights up. And up we go. Doors open on floor 3. Now, I happen to be staying on floor 3. I always stayed in room 325. So I get out of the elevator, and there's this shadow figure. Apparently, it had been on the elevator with me, and I didn't know it. I couldn't see it. I could feel something, but I couldn't see it. Well, it took on a visible specter as it went down the hallway from the elevator. It went around the corner, so I quickly walked down there and looked just as it's going. And I won't mention the name of the room in case anyone listening to this knows, who knows me, knows the hotel I used to stay in. I wouldn't want anybody to go and ask for that room or anything and then get in trouble. I'd feel responsible. But anyway, I see it go through the hotel room door. And I go back downstairs. I get on the elevator. I go back downstairs, and I come out, and Danny's talking to a guest at the desk. So I go back and sit down at the table. And I'm thinking about what I just saw, And Danny comes over when he's done. He says, "What did you see?" And I told him what happened. And I said, "Who's staying in that room tonight?" He says, "Nobody tonight." He said, "That's typically the last room we rent out on that floor." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, because that room," he said, "since I've been working here," he says, "we've had 3 or 4 people actually die in that room. I've had to use, they have this hydraulic tool that they stick in the door, and it pops the door open so they can get in. So if a guest had locked the door and put the chain on, there's no way even with a key they can get in because of that. There's like a latch you flip so the door hits the latch when you try to open it and you can't open it." So he says we have to use that to get in, and a lot of times we find a person deceased in the bed. And it's always, as far as they knew, natural causes. But he said it's odd that it's always in that one room on the 3rd floor. And I said, "Wow." I says, "Well, do me a favor. I'm here all the time. I want you to put me in that room from now on." He said, "No." He says, I really don't want to do that." He said, I'd feel awful if you were one of the people I found dead in the room. I said, "Don't worry about me." I said, "Don't worry about me." I said, "I'm very, very religious. God is the center of everything I do. And whatever God's will is, I'm okay with it. But I really I'm a very curious person, right? Very, very curious. So I really need to understand this. So he says, well, okay. So the rest of that week, I stayed in room 325, my original room. And the plan was the next time I came back, I would stay in this room. So now that I know this is going on, so the rest of the week, every night, I'd sit down there with Danny, and this thing would play out like a video, the same movement and everything. Every night it would go around the corner, down the hall, onto the elevator, out on the third floor, and through that door. I mean, just right through the door, like the door wasn't there, and it was gone. And what it looked like was if you saw a shadow on a wall as someone's walking, I mean, no definition or nothing, you could tell it was the shadow of a person. I mean, had the shape of a person and everything, but it was just black. There was no features, no like red eyes or horns or anything like that. It was just a shadow figure. And it would dissipate. It would come back, it would go through walls, it would disappear. It was that kind of a thing. And so Adam, Danny's son, worked third shift. So when Adam come in to relieve Danny, I talked to Adam about it. And Adam says, oh God, he says, I never leave the front desk at night unless a guest calls me and needs me to come to the room to fix a TV or do something. He said, I stay here because the one place that shadow figure never goes is behind the front desk. He said, so that's where I stay. I say, why are you afraid of it? He said, because it's evil. I said, why do you think it's evil? He said, I sense it. He says, and I can sense these things. It's best left alone. And I says, well, I'll be staying in the room the next time. He said, well, he said the same thing his father said, please don't do that, Frank. Mr. Frank, he called me too. And then he tells me that a group of his friends who are into parapsychology like I am are going to stay at a prison, the most haunted prison in the state of Ohio. It's called Blood Prison. That's the nickname. That's not the actual name of the prison, but it's come to be known as Blood Prison. And it's been closed for many years. And one of Adam's friends was a security guard at that prison on third shift. And he agreed to let Adam and 2 or 3 of his friends spend the night in the prison, locked in the prison for the whole night. So he asked me if I was interested. I said, oh yeah, I'll be there. So we set the date. And there was a woman who was vice president at the company I worked for who didn't believe in anything spiritual. And I told her, well, seeing is believing. Like Jason Hawes always says, all a skeptic is someone who hasn't had an experience yet. So I said, come with me, spend the night at the prison, and if nothing happens, then I'll go along with what you say that spirits don't exist. But this prison is supposed to be really bad. So the day before we're supposed to stay there, so this is like a week or so later. I'm trying to remember when it was. A week or so later, I get a notification the afternoon of the night I'm supposed to be at the prison that I had to go to a senior management meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I had to present something to the senior management team. And the vice president that was going to come with me to the prison also had to be there. So the 2 of us had to bow out the last minute. Adam and his friends, however, did go. Next day when I talked to Adam, I get down there about 6 o'clock in the morning, and Adam worked third shift, like I said, so he was there till 7:30 in the morning. I said, how did it go? And he said, we'll have to talk about it later. I can't talk about it now. He says, I just bopped into, I don't know if he was picking up his check or something. And I think his sister Bethany covered for him that night. In any event, he never really did tell me what happened, but he didn't look right. Something definitely had happened that night. A short time thereafter, it's a matter of weeks, maybe a month later, his father, Danny, got diagnosed with terminal esophageal cancer. Adam went to a nightclub and was dancing and had an aneurysm and dropped dead right on the spot. 19 years old. Danny goes in the hospital a day later, drops dead. So now within 4-6 weeks after this blood prison incident and us playing around with this shadow figure, they're both dead. So obviously it was a big deal. And I ended up staying in room 325 again because someone changed my room. They changed it the first week I was supposed to be in there. They changed it the second week. And I just said, maybe it's kind of better left alone. Maybe I'll just leave this alone. So I never did stay in that room. And after Danny and Adam were gone, I never really did go back downstairs at night and hang out with the manager. There were people I didn't know. It was somebody new all the time. It's hard to hold on to people in a hotel. And like I say, Danny had been there a decade or more, and so had Adam. So I don't know at this point why the two of them passed away the way they did so suddenly. I know both of them were very frightened by whatever this thing was in the hotel. And I know Adam saw something at that prison because he visibly looked shaken that morning. And again, I never got a chance to talk to him after that and find out what happened. He passed away before I had a chance to talk to him. So, discretion is a better part of valor. I'm not like these guys you see on TV, ghost hunters. I don't look for trouble. I don't need to be convinced that ghosts exist. I know they exist. So unless I'm going into a place to help someone who's in distress, I'm really not interested anymore. When I was younger, perhaps, but now I know what I know. I believe what I believe, and if you've read my book, Stories Best Told in the Dark, you'll see that I've had my share of some pretty scary things happen. And my next story, I'll probably share with you the very first paranormal experience I had in a house that no longer exists. It was torn down when they built Route 95. And I think I was only like 2.5 years old, something like that, when it happened. And I got corroborating evidence from somebody else that it happened and from my mother, and be an interesting story. So I'll go into that the next time. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you tonight. There's a common theme here in a lot of my stories. My entire life, I've been seeing this shadow figure. It's always the same one, no matter where I am. Either all shadow men look alike, or this one particular one just seems to follow me around. I don't know. But as I get into some of my other stories, you'll see a common thread of whatever this thing is. It's not something to take lightly, and it's not something I certainly want to challenge or in any way harass. So I'm letting it go for as long as I can. So that's my story for tonight. I'd like to thank you all for listening. And like I said, I'll be back in a few days like normal with something else. For now, if you need to share any of your experiences with me, just go to storiesbesttoldinthedark@gmail.com and leave me a message. If you like this sort of thing, thumbs up, subscribe button. And like I said, now I'm also on that Podbean app, and you can check me out there as well. Okay? So talk to you soon, and I hope you all stay well. Bye.